Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. We're here today with special guest, Dr. Arielle Emmett, who's here to share with us her Nautilus award-winning book, The Logoharp, a cyborg novel of China and America in the year 2121. So what would it take to reclaim your voice when every word is scripted for you? This dystopian novel asks unsettling questions about love, loyalty, and the price of obedience in a world where no one lives past 50. Dr. Arielle Emmett is a writer and science journalist specializing in East Asia, Africa, and cross-cultural interactions. She was a contributing editor to Smithsonian Air and Space magazine and a Fulbright scholar and specialist in Kenya and Indonesia. A Mandarin and French speaker, Dr. Emmett has won prizes in magazine and journal competitions staged by the American Society of Journalists and Authors and the International Communications Association. She has reported and taught in China and Hong Kong, Taiwan, Indonesia, East Africa, Ireland, and Italy. So welcome to the show, Dr. Arielle Emmett.
Thank you.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about your Nautilus award-winning book. Congratulations. I mean, what a great accomplishment.
Never expected it.
Well, I can see easily why it was selected. This is a page-turner of a book, and I'd love for you to share with us what inspired you to write this.
I was a journalist for many, many years, and I lived in China, in Taiwan, where I learned Mandarin, Hong Kong, Indonesia, and most recently Africa, on a Fulbright scholarship investigating the Chinese. And over time, since I was a little girl, my mother was fascinated by the Orient. That kind of got me going with studies of the Orient. I was an East Asian studies major at University of Michigan, and then I decided I really needed to learn a language, so I took intensive Chinese, and then I went to Taiwan as a very young person. I was 20, lived with a Chinese family, and more or less mastered Mandarin. It's a very complex language, and but certainly I can converse, and over time, I became more and more interested in the political parts of China and also our own, what is happening to our own journalism. And I think that because I was a science writer and I was very interested in science, my perspective on political journalism, I was more of an observer. And as a result, I came up with some different ideas about what was happening to journalism.
Can you share more about that with us? I think it ties in so nicely with this book.
Well, basically, the concept of this novel is that there is such a thing as a reverse journalist, a journalist of future prospects. That the main character, Naomi, starts out as an American writer, a young university graduate, not sure what she wants to do, is drawn to journalism, and over time she decides that she wants to go work for Mother Country, because Mother Country in 100 years could be China, could be the global dominant power. And over time, she realizes that what China wants her to do is to create a harmonious future for the planet. To be able to do that, she's not as interested in projecting current events as she is foreseeing and scripting the future with her writing and her broadcasting. And she also has a talent for foreseeing things. She's able to foresee what's going to happen to her parents. She's able to foresee droughts in the world, zoonotic viruses that spread across the planet the way COVID-19 did. She can see all that. So she's picked to become an elite reverse journalist, and that's like a reverse engineer. And the idea is that that the past is re-engineered to create a future of more acceptable memories. And this is what I think is happening in journalism, that there is a kind of partisanship that we know about. Journalism has really separated into many, many different channels. And pretty much according to Media Boss's readings of the audience, certain kinds of information are cherry-picked, framed, certain things are left out. There is an agenda. And what happens over time when the media pounds people through the internet, through social media, et cetera, is that eventually it goes a long way in creating the future, not just reporting the present tense. And I think that's what's happened in our country. And it's happened really all over the world. There are some very, objective, good sources of journalism, but there's too much of this cherry picking and framing only certain events and ignoring others. And that gave me the idea for this woman, Naomi, who eventually becomes a reverse journalist who is in essence a kind of media propagandist. She's almost like the Tokyo Rose of the 22nd century, only she begins to realize it. And it isn't sitting well with her. And that's the contradiction. So she becomes part robotic. She's installed with this Logoharp on the, it is like a satellite receptor on her head. She's able to hear government instructions, but she also hears other voices that she can't quite identify. She doesn't know whether they're extraterrestrial voices, spiritual voices of the divine, voices of her own conscience, but it sets up a conflict, and that really drives the narrative throughout the story.
I want to touch on the Logoharp for a moment. What does this symbolize in this story?
The Logoharp to me is, I originally thought about it from my training in Greek philosophy. It comes from the word logos, which means the divine order or the divine principle of the universe. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus used it to talk about the flux, the change of the universe. In this book, Naomi receives instructions from this logos harp, but it's shortened to Logoharp, sounds like a logo, because the masses don't really understand the idea of a logos. So that she is hearing voices of the universe. And this drives her to a kind of moral choice. And it is not necessarily the choice that the government wants her to have. So I guess the logo harp is the voice of conscience. And it's very easy to get muddled in this day and age as a journalist or even as a receiver of journalism.
What inspired this post apocalyptic America in the story?
Well, I mean, I don't want to get into a lot of political insight here, but what I can say is that there is a very fine writer named Ray Dalio. He's an economist who wrote a book called The Changing World Order. And he believed that every great civilization basically has 6 stages. And he estimated, based on the dividedness of our country, the inability to hear the other side and to compromise, our racism, some of the problems that we've had, that we're in about stage 5.5. And so the dystopia that I created 100 years from now is based on that trajectory. Now, does that mean it will happen? I don't know. But this was, again, my imagination, having lived in China and seen the advantage of what I would call a one-party dictatorship, where really people who are dissidents aren't tolerated very well. In our country, we have all kinds of dissidents, and we have people who are really intolerant of any other point of view. And I think that's the beginning of the end. I think when you can't compromise, when you don't respect democracy, when you don't respect multiple voices, when you make every decision based on what a close-knit set of advisors is telling you, when corruption and incompetence get too close together, I think that's what has happened in our government. Partially, not everyone. And I think it's going to be very hard to fight. And as a result, that was the dystopia I created. I was basically creating kind of the final stage in which we've had 3 economic breakdowns that's talked about in the story. And China basically takes over as the main trading partner, and it treats America, which we call Ameriguo, which is guo in Chinese means nation. In Chinese, it's actually Meiguo, which means beautiful country. And Zhongguo means central kingdom or central country. But basically, China takes over, and China becomes the main power of the world, and America becomes a subsidiary, a kind of suzerainty. And that's what happens. And therefore, Naomi, who's young, wants to go to the center of power. She wants to rise. She's betrayed by a lover who happens to be Chinese, who makes her feel bad because she's white, which is kind of a reversal of what most people think about. But there is some familial racism in the story, which is very interesting, and I have personally experienced that. So that was the cross-cultural part of the book. So in this particular scenario, if Ray Dalio is correct, China may be the leading power in 100 years. I don't know, but we'll see.
This book definitely gives the reader pause. And one of the things you explore in the book, or many of the things actually, is trauma, memory, and healing. Why were these important topics and themes for you?
Well, I think personally, so many of us go through early traumas. And I think trauma skews memory. And I think at the end, we have to use our heads as much as our hearts to recuperate, to put things in context, to understand past trauma and to get past it. I think that's what we say, getting past it, if you ever really get past it. And I feel that that was a very important part of my life. I lost my father at an early age. And to be able to get past that, I had to get past some of the memories. I had to soften them a little bit. But in this book, the heroine, Naomi, gets to speak to her late father and her late mother. And she gets to understand what they were really about. And that was very important for her evolution and even for her healing. And that was part of why I think this heroine came out on the right side in the end.
Well, your book definitely captures the reader, and there are so many different parts I want to touch on. One is the disposal of people who are over the age of 50. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Oh, that's a big one. That's big in the book. Okay, well, I have generally found that at a certain age, basically, professionally speaking, I have a doctorate. I got it fairly late in the game, and generally, I've found that the overwhelming social prejudice is for young people starting out, young people with lower pay expectations. In China, people are forcibly retired depending on who they are at 50 or 55. They really have to make their way over a 30-year period. And after that, they're kind of honorably retired. And what I did with this was extrapolate what it would be like if society no longer could use, because of overpopulation and declining resources, what do we do with these people? And without again being a spoiler, I can just say that the solution was very interesting and that it was not all negative. One of the aspects of this is that these people who are quote unquote forcibly retired are allowed to go back and dream of the life they never had, to meet the lover that they lost, to find the child who died in a hospital strike, whatever it was. They have a chance for 10 days to go back and relive the life they never had. And that to me is part of the healing. And certainly, there are times when I want to do the same thing.
Music, especially the Logoharp, seems to carry this ancestral wisdom. How did you see the role of music in healing or awakening in your book?
Well, Naomi thinks she hears that she's told that when she has the Logoharp installed, that she's going to be able to hear everything pretty much symphonically, that she will hear stentorian sounds when things are bad. She'll hear clacks and drums when there's tension and terrible feelings among the global electorate, because she's receiving signals from them. It's a two-way street. It's full duplex. She's completely attuned to the globe around her, to societies. And so she has to mediate between fairly cut and dry government instructions about what's acceptable and what isn't, and the things she feels from the people around her, not just her close friends, and there are several in the book. She has a close journalist friend named Miranda, and another one named Long Fei, which means waste of space. I thought that was a funny name. His name is Long Fei. Just way to space. But basically, the music that she hears is part of that universal language that she gets by being a receptor of higher order harmonies. And that's what she's looking for. She's looking for harmony. She's kind, even though she's flawed, she's kind and she wants the best for the world. She doesn't want war. She doesn't want mayhem. She doesn't want macho kid games in the sandbox. And we know what those are like. She wants something better. And part of it is because I chose the harp as a metaphor, but I also feel that sometimes we hear music when something is special to us and something is good to us and something is terrible to us. And some of us are more attuned than others. I'm a pianist, not a great one, but I love music, and it's possible that some of that just rubbed off.
Well, you interwove that so masterfully. I had to tell you, like, once I picked this book up, I could not put it down. It's such a great read. And I noticed that there are clear elements of spiritual and mythological storytelling here. So, how did both faith and myth shape the world of this novel?
Well, this is truly, I can honestly say this is truly a cross-cultural novel because I had training in Greek mythology and Greek drama along with Chinese, and somehow they filtered into the same narrative that Naomi talks about not just logos, which is that divine order of the universe, but she talks about pathos and the feelings of drama. I don't remember whether she says exactly catharsis. Of course, that's Aristotelian, and there's a lot of controversy about that. But the whole business of the creation myths that, when she finds a lover named Jens, who is actually her surgeon in this, who helps transform her reluctantly. And she remembers the story of how the world began and what humans were. And in the original Greek, humans were connected together. They were two bodies connected together, but they did not face each other, and they did cartwheels around the earth. And Zeus, wanting to discipline them, decided to cut them in two. And to be able to heal that wound, they turned around and were always seeking the other half. And that to me is what most romantic and emotional and friendship things are all about, seeking that other half. So that played into it a lot. My parents were actors, and they were incredibly good about educating us in Greek drama, Bulfinch's mythology, the whole bit, Euripides, Sophocles, all the plays. And I remember my mother even took me to Greece, and I got to see the National Theatre Company of Greece do a rehearsal of Medea. And that played into um, my own spirit. I don't know that I could say that I'm of one sect or another, but I do believe in spiritual richness. I believe there are higher powers that we don't understand. I wish humans were a little kinder to each other and stopped hating each other because we didn't all believe the exact same thing. But basically, I think that there is a spirituality both in the music, the drama, and even in the Confucian and the Maoist stories. The interesting thing about Mao's fourth wife, Jiang Qing, who is mentioned in my book, is that she was an actress when she was in Shanghai as a young person, and she was very brave. Her father abused her. She ended up crossing enemy lines during the war and met Mao in Yunnan, and I believe it was Yunnan, when she was teaching drama. And they got together. Of course, it was very controversial. And later on, she was completely reviled in the Cultural Revolution because she was tough on people. She wanted power. She wanted the power that she was never granted while Mao was alive. And she did some really pretty nasty things. She resented some of the artists who were more accomplished, and she had left her career behind. She was quite beautiful as a young woman. And there's a scene in my book in which she plays Nora in The Doll's House, which is yet another reference. And she She talks about wanting to emerge as an independent person, not just someone put down by her husband, Torvald. And Naomi says in this, because she's watching this replay of Nora with Jiang Qing on a video monitor, at least a reconstruction of it, and saying, I just wish she understood that all the people that she's been suppressing have the same desire. And that was part of, so that was all part of it. It's a mix, Greek, Chinese. I think it's very rich when students, I have two grandchildren now who are little girls. The older one is, they're both extremely bright. And I try to, they both speak almost fluent Mandarin because they're in intensive programs in Utah, of all places, in Salt Lake City. And the older one is just about fluent. And I've really tried to tell her that it's really good to understand more than one culture, not just Western culture, not just Eastern culture, but every culture, including African culture.
Now, it all comes together nicely. Thank you. And it has me kind of thinking there are a lot of books about dystopian futures out there. What makes yours so different other than what we've just been talking about?
I think the cross-cultural theme, the fact that it is about China and America 100 years from now, I think that most of the Chinese science fiction I've read has really, like Liu Cixin's brilliant three-body problem, and it really is brilliant. It's phenomenal, and they've made two series out of it, both a Western series and a Chinese series. But I think that China's atmosphere of censorship is such that those kinds of books have to follow certain patterns. They cannot directly make fun of or attack government structure. They talk about alien invasions, the Cultural Revolution, which was the past. And in America, most of the science fiction books, which are dystopian, tend to be monocultural. The only exception I've read recently has been The Wind-Up Girl by Paolo Bacialupi. It was published in 2009, and that was about Thailand and some of the terrible things that he envisioned there in another century. But most of the books are not, they are not cross-cultural. I don't think a lot of them want to stretch people's minds the way, I mean, scientifically and technically, yes, but culturally, no. And I think that's the difference with my book. I think that the characters there, she's in love with a Western man, she's in love with a Chinese man, there are women in the story, there are journalists, and it stretches over a period of time, and there's a rebellion, and I think that it has really more roots in speculative fiction or a projection of the current situation in our world today. And I think that's maybe more ambitious than some of the recent science fiction I've read. Some of it's so way down, I don't get it. But anyway, that's another story.
What would you like readers and our listeners to take away from the Logoharp?
I think that I'd like them to reevaluate their thinking about the media. I'd like them to be more critical of what they're seeing and hearing. I think anybody who would like the Logoharp would probably already be fairly sophisticated about that kind of stuff and understand baloney when they hear it, or understand how something is so skewed in one way or one partisan way that it's basically lies. That's one side of it. The other side is hope. I think that the journey of Naomi is a really good model of someone who takes a very torturous path, but then ends up doing the right thing. And there is such a thing as the right thing. Morally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, there are such things as the right thing. And that's what I want people to contemplate. I want them to contemplate what it means to love, to believe, but also to be open-minded and accept other people and understand that there's almost always a backstory to everyone. And that as a society, we need to embrace a message of tolerance and openness and sacrifice, sometimes self-sacrifice, and believe that our world is worth saving. That's where I'll leave it for now.
Arielle, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
Well, I have two websites. One is the Logoharp Community, and it's easy to find on Facebook. I have another website called Leaping Tiger Press. I'd be happy to correspond with anybody who wants to know more about this. I mean, it's a pretty complicated book, and it did take quite some time.
Well, Arielle, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled.
Well, thank you, Dr. Emmett. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your award-winning novel, The Logoharp, a cyborg novel of China and America in the year 2121. Make sure to visit Dr. Arielle Emmett's website, leapingtigerpress.com, to learn more about her book and to be part of her community. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.